When many people think of the word hero, they imagine someone who is larger than life. Maybe the person is famous or has done something extremely courageous. For me, though, I think of ordinary people in my life. Christopher Reeve once said, "Hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. They are the real heroes, and so are the families and friends who have stood by them." Now that's a sentiment I agree with 100%. You don't have to be some knight in shining armor to be a hero. You just have to be important to someone in your life. And so, when I think about my heroes, 3 people in particular come to mind. The first person who comes to mind is my mother. While there are hundreds of reasons I could give for her being a hero, in particular, I think of her as one because of how she went out of her way to make sure I had a normal life as possible. My parents divorced when I was only 4 years old, and so my family life was anything but normal. And she always did her best to make it work. For example, when I was still young, maybe 7 or 8, I was having a really difficult time not seeing her much. You see, my father had custody of me during the week, and I spent my weekends with her. And when she found out how hard it was for me to only see her on the weekends, she started taking me out to dinner every Wednesday night. It didn't matter that she didn't have much money and had to drive out her way to come get me in the middle of the week. She made sure that without fail, she was there to take me out and spend the night with me. All these years later, I still remember those Wednesday night dinners. Now fast forward about 10 years to when I was in high school. At this point in my life, I'd been to 5 or 6 different schools. Every time I'd get settled in and make new friends, my father would have us move to another town. And so there came a time when I was in high school, and I ended up moving in with my mother permanently. However, she lived 30 minutes away from my current high school. I was upset that I was going to have to switch schools yet again and make new friends, but my mother decided she didn't want to put me through that. Instead, she got up extra early every single day for the next 2 years and drove me to school in the morning, just so I didn't have to leave. I never really thought too much about it at the time, but looking back on it now, I can't imagine having to add that type of trip to my daily commute. And because of that, and many other things, my mother is one of my biggest heroes. It's interesting that I mentioned that my mother helped me get to school, because that's exactly what the next person on my list did. However, she did it in a completely different way. The second hero I want to mention is my friend Colleen. I met Colleen when I was 19 years old and had already graduated high school and dropped out of college. She was, and still is, one of the most upbeat and energetic people I know. It's hard to be in a bad mood around her because she was always so fast to make you smile. She quickly became one of my absolute best friends. And as I said before, I give her more credit than anyone else in getting me back to school. At the time, I was working my 9 to 5 with no thought of ever going back to school. I coasted through my days and really lacked ambition to better myself. At the same time, Colleen had just found a career she loved and was in the progress of going back to school herself. One day, while having a few drinks, the topic of school came up. She was excited and nervous about going back, and she asked me, "Have you ever thought about going back at all?" And I sat there and I thought about it for a minute, and I replied honestly, "No, not really. I've kind of given up on myself." She looked at me for a second and said, "Don't give up on yourself. You have so much potential." And so, over the next few days, I really thought about it, and I said to myself, well, here you have someone who cares a lot for you, that you respect, and thinks that you should give it another shot. And that really meant a lot to me, so I went ahead and I did it. I continued working, and I started to go to school part-time. And that was about 6 years ago, and so here I am today talking to all of you because of Colleen, one of my best friends. And that's exactly what she had in common with my final hero. The third person I want to tell you about tonight is my friend Justin. And the reason that he makes the list is because he's one of the most fiercely loyal friends that I've ever had. I met Justin when we were only 5 years old at the apartment complex we both lived in. We became friends immediately, and even though both of us have moved around a lot during our lives, we remained best friends ever since. We are currently 26 years old, which puts us at 21 years of friendship, whereas Justin so eloquently phrased it one night while we were having a beer. "Man, if our friendship was a person, it would be old enough to drink with us right now." I don't think I've laughed so hard in a long time. And both of us have been through a lot in our lives, but no matter what happened, he's been a true friend. He's been there for all the big milestones in my life, birthdays, graduations. He was the best man at my wedding. And just to give you an example of his loyalty, when I had just started my current job, I ended up tearing my MCL. That's a ligament around your knee, and in essence, you cannot bend your leg until it heals. Because of this, I couldn't drive. Justin took the time to drive me to and from work for 2 months while my leg healed. It's things like that that really make me appreciate him as a friend. And so while he didn't inspire me to any particular great deed, his loyalty and friendship have been a welcome addition to my life and are the reason he is the third person on my list. And so, As you can see, the everyday people in my life are a lot more important to me than some famous athlete or actor, or what you may think of as a typical hero. I've been blessed with great people in my life, and all of them have made it much better. I'm sure that anyone who stops to think about their friends and family in their lives will find that they have a lot more heroes than they first thought.